Be'ez Hashem Yisboch, we begin Perek Shlishi, the third chapter in the Rambam's Hilchos Kriyas, the Lord's recital of Shema, and the Sefer Av, the book of love of Hashem, which in this Perek we begin the discussion regarding things that get in the way of the recital of the Shema. As Rambam gives a halacha regarding the purity of the person himself. HaKoyer Shema, if someone says the Shema, Roichitz Yadav b'mayim kodem sheyikra, he should wash his hand, he has to wash his hands with water before he says the Shema, because generally we presume one's hands are busy and they would touch unclean places. Now, Hagiyah my Kri'as, and now let's say it reaches, it's the time for saying the Shema, and he doesn't find water before he could say the Shema. Lo ya'achek Kri'asa, should not delay the recital of the Shema, and to go look for water. Rather, he goes and wipes his hands, ba'afar, in dust, or in rocks, or on the beam. Okay, it's similar types of things that you could rub your hands off on. And he says Shema because really water is not critical. It doesn't say erchatz b'mayim. It says erchatz b'nikayin, or wash. With cleanliness, what's called midi demanki, anything that can clean the hands will be valid. Halacha Bey is regarding the purity of the place. In koiren, one cannot recite not in the bathhouse, not in the bathroom, even if there's no excrement there right now, it still will not qualify for machanecha kodesh, for your camp to be holy, where you have to when you recite things. And not in the cemetery, and not on the side of just one dead person, because of what's called loig l'rosh cher. It's embarrassing, shameful for the dead person who cannot do the mitzvahs. So it can't be near dead people either. Now, but if one distances himself 4 amas, which is around 6 to 8 feet, from the grave, in the midst from the dead person, then one is permitted to say the Shema. It's not considered in the domain of that person, which is Daled Amas. Whoever said the Shema in the place where you're not supposed to, has to say it over again, because since he violated the words of the sages, they penalized him and made him say it over again. Halacha Gimel. A new lavatory, which was prepared but was never utilized as a bathroom. You're allowed to say Shema facing it, but not inside of it. Now, however, a new bathhouse, which no one ever bathed in before, one is permitted to say the Shema inside of it, because it's not filthy, and also the name, like a bathroom, is not so disgraceful as as would be a bathhouse. Now, if there was 2 rooms, one of them he designated for a lavatory. He says regarding the second one, and this, that's all he says. Now the second one is in doubt. Did he designate also as a bathroom or not? Because possibly what he meant to say is, and this also, or maybe he meant to say, and this for something else. Now therefore, so initially one should not recite the Shema in the other one, because maybe what's called the halachas of yados, which is that you say that partial statements like the whole statement that it was for a bathroom. But if they did say Shema over there, Yatzis full obligation, because since designation, preparing it, is only a rabbinic elevation, they weren't stringent regarding the doubt if it was prepared, because it's a suffix rabbanan, which is lahakal. No, but if Amar says gam zed, notice he didn't just say and this. He said and this also. Then then they both are considered designated. They encourage them, and I'll say Shema in the second one also. Now the courtyard of the bathhouse, that's the area where the people are still dressed over there when they go into the bathhouse. One is permitted to say Kri'as Shema over there. Halacha Dalet. Now these halachas not only regarding the reciting of the Shema, rather any topic from the holy words, for example, learning Torah or davening. One is forbidden to say it in a bathhouse or in a bathroom, even if he says it in a mundane language. Now, and this wasn't only regarding saying the words, but even to think in one's heart, did return the words of Torah in a bathroom, in the bathhouse, or in the filthy area. And what is that? In the area where there's excrement, feces, or urine. That even that, just thinking, would be forbidden. Halacha hey. Mundane matters. One is permitted to say it in the holy language, that is the language that the Torah is written in the bathroom. And so too the names that we praise Hashem in a descriptive way, which are not God's defined names. For example, Racham, the merciful one, the Chanan, and the compassionate one, the Beneman, and the trustworthy one, the case and similar things like that. Although we give those appellations to God, but it's not really his names. You're allowed to say them in the bathroom. But God's designated names, those are the names that one's not allowed to erase if one writes it. Those you're not allowed to mention in the bathroom, or in a used bathhouse. Now, but if it happens to be for a person to separate someone from doing something that's forbidden in the bathhouse or even in the bathroom, the mafish, you could separate the person by telling him halacha, even in the holy language and in holy matters, because to separate someone from doing something forbidden is different. Halacha vav regarding excrement and urine. So tzayis adam, human feces. And regarding the waste matter of dogs and swine, that when there, and that's the qualification only in these last two, when there's hides inside of them, where they would do that to go ahead and use it for a type of tanning purposes, or any excrement that has a bad smell could go in like these. For example, let's say the red excrement of roosters. One is not allowed to say the Shema facing them. And the chen keneged meiruglayim shaladim, so to facing the urine of a human being, of a meiruglayim shalbahema, but the urine of an animal, current keneged one is permitted to say Shema facing it because it doesn't have a bad smell, and therefore that's not forbidden. Now a child, that cannot eat, like a baby, they cannot eat an olive size of grain, in the matter of time that an adult would be able to eat 3 eggs worth of grain. It's called kadeh chilas pras. Then you don't have to distance yourself from that baby's limit to us, not from his waste matter, but not from his urine, because it doesn't have a bad smell. Halacha zayin. Now, if the excrement, if the waste matter was dry like earthenware, still also liquors connected, you now say Shema facing it, because it still has the name of tzaya on it. Now, well, let's say it was drier more than earthenware. If you would throw the waste matter, it would crumble. That's like dust. And you're allowed to say Shema facing that waste matter. Regarding urine, should get absorbed in the ground. If the hand would become moist, even not that it can make something else moist, but the hand itself would become wet to the touch. Also, liquids connect them. It's forbidden to say Shema facing them. But from love, if not, even if you could tell that there was urine over here, but if it's no moisture here at all, mutter, then it's permitted. Halacha ches. How far does a person have to go from the waste matter and from the urine? And then they can say the Shema. So that's Arba Amas, an area of 4 Amas, which consider a different domain. Now, but Midram, when do we say this? That's only if it's behind him, or from the sides. You can connect upon him, was facing him, and then you have to be as far as that your eyes would not be able to see, and then you could say the Shema. Halacha tes, but when do we say this, that you have to distance yourself from them? It's only if it's in the same area, the same house, same room as them, in an equal space. If there was an elevated area of 10 tvachim, or a lower area by a height of 10 tvachim, then you could be right there on the side of them, and you could say, even in the same room, because it's considered like a different area because of the 10 tfachim gap of height of either higher or lower. Because there's this gap between them. But who, as long as he doesn't have the bad odor, doesn't smell it from where he is. So let's say he covers a bowl, a vessel, over the excrement, or on the urine, although it's with him in the same room, it's like it's buried, he would be able to say Shema facing where the area of the waste matter is. Now, let's say between him and the excrement, this dirty feces, was a partition of glass. Now, although he sees the waste matter right there behind the glass, you're allowed to say Shema right on the side of it, because it really doesn't depend on seeing it. It depends on being covered. Because the pasuk says that you should cover what comes out from you, the waste matter. That's specifically regarding tzaya versus that of erva. Now, if a person put a quarter of a log of water into urine of one session of urination, so then you're allowed to say the Kri'as there, even within the Dalet Amas, for each session of urination, a revius of water helps to nullify it. Halachid Aleph. If there was waste matter in a pit, so what you could do is you could stand with your sandal over the pit, and you could say the Shema because it's being covered, which the Chesi says, it's being covered by his sandal. But the provision is shaliyah sandoli negeba. But it can't be that his shoes, his sandal, is touching the waist matter because the shoe is like your clothing. You can't have waist matter on your clothing. Now, let's say facing him was feces. There was very little, like a drop. So what you could do is rake ova, so you could spit on it like a thick spit. I should discuss until it's covered. And then you could say Shema because it's covered. Now let's say in the tishas tzoy al basar. Let's say there was this residue of waste matter on his skin. Or let's say his hands are dirty from the bathroom, but there's no real waste matter. And it didn't have a bad smell. And they cut none because it was so little. Or because it was so dry. The mutter liquors, then you're allowed to say the Shema because it doesn't have a bad smell. But if it was in its original place, meaning by the anus, where one excretes this waste matter, then even though you don't see it when the person's standing, but since it could be visible when he's sitting down, then it opens up and you can see. Also, liquors, you now say the Shema, you clean it out very well. And they should say because waste matter is moist and has a bad smell. Moreover, many of the Ga'in of the period before the Rambam of the Rishonim, they ruled a person actually is not allowed to say the Shema if his hands were filthy, and that's appropriate to do because it's still disgraceful to say the Shema even though there's no actual waste matter to say Shema in that state. A bad smell that has an origin, meaning the waste matter is there and it's bringing up a bad smell. So marchik arba amas, you have to distance yourself 4 amas, and then you can say the Shema in pasuk arech if where you are you don't have the smell, it stops. But if the smell doesn't stop where you are, even though you're more than daled amas, you have to go as far away as where the smell stops. Now, if it doesn't have an origin, what does that mean? For example, if someone has that he flatulates, that wind comes out from him from beneath in his lower region, where it creates a bad smell, all he has to do is distance himself at the place where the smell stops, and they can say the Shema, even though it's not even daled amas away. The terms grav and re'i are both earthenware vessels, and they mean the same thing. It's just that re'i is for the waste matter is grav, and by urine you call it ovid, but it's a urinal or a toilet that they're designated for one to relieve themselves. One's not allowed to say Shema facing them. Even though there's nothing in it, it doesn't have a bad smell. Nishim kebesa kisa because it has a halachic status like a bathroom since it's designated for it. And if you would put in a rebis of water, it wouldn't be effective like the halacha of any bathroom. If there's waste matter that's passing by, for example, let's say the waste matter was a dirty diaper that was floating on the water on the river passing him. So Aslik is connected. He's not saying Shema. He's not saying Shema facing that waste matter. Now the mouth of a swine, has a halacha like passing waste matter because it's always filthy and all the garbage. And Vasalik is connected. Never one's not say Krishma facing him until he passes by him already an area of Dalet Amas. So let's say someone's milking Shema and he's middle walking, which you're allowed to say as you're walking, and he gets to a filthy place. He should not put his hand on his mouth as like a covering and say the Shema as if that's going to help. No, he has to stop until he bypasses that area itself. And he flatulates and a bad odor comes out from beneath him. Yafsik has to stop until the bad odor stops, and then he goes and resumes his recital of the Shema. And the same thing is regarding the learning of Torah. But in contrast, but let's say if his friend flatulates and he passes gas, although the Shema you have to stop because of the bad odor. But in the place of the if it's his friend, his chavrusa, someone else in the base medrash that flatulates, then he doesn't have to stop learning. The reason for that is because a person would always have to be leaving the base of medrash, can't learn on the outside if anyone flatulates himself. He could be careful, but for Krishma, he could go outside and say it, and therefore for Krishma, he would have to stop. But for words of Torah, if someone else passes gas, he wouldn't have to stop learning. If someone was saying the Shema in the house, he's not sure is there excrement or there's urine. Or maybe there isn't. He's not sure, is there waste matter here somewhere in this room? So he's allowed to say the Shema, and because we presume generally that a room is not a place with waste matter. Now, but let's say he was saying it in a garbage dump. And the Sabbath Lam Yeshem say, not sure is there waste man over here, or there isn't, Lo Yikrach Yibdik, then he shouldn't say the Shema until he checks, because Shecheskas HaAshba Shiva Makamat Nevis. We presume that a garbage dump is a place where there's filth, people throw out dirty diapers, all these types of things, and therefore he wouldn't be able to say until he checks. But regarding a doubt if there's urine, I feel about Ashba Mutalikras, and even the garbage dump, one is allowed to say the Shema, because really the whole biblical prohibition is only regarding a stream of urine. And therefore, since it's a doubt now regarding not a stream, but rather just, let's say, a puddle of urine, so because of that doubt, then he would be permitted to say the Shema. I look at the Zayin, distancing oneself from erva, from the nakedness. So Kashem Sha'asa Likras Keneged Tzayu Meraglayim, just like we said that it's forbidden to say the Shema facing feces or urine at Sheyachri until you distance yourself. Kach Asa Likras Keneged Erva, so too one's forbidden to say the Shema facing the covered, the generally covered areas at Sheyachs upon them until he turns his face around. And that's a guy even from a Gentile. We don't consider it like an animal or a cotton or even of a child. The Yukra Keneged Erva, one should not say the Shema facing their generally their erva, their genital area. And even if there's a partition of glass separating, which we said works for tzaya or meraglaim, but here here the pasuk is it uses the terminology of seeing. So since he sees it, so he's not allowed to say the Shema upon him until he turns his face the other way. And the whole body of the woman is erva, is considered as erva. You shouldn't be looking at the body of a woman when saying the Shema, even if it's his wife. And therefore, if it's uncovered a handbreadth from her body, from where a place is usually covered, the Yikra Connected is not say Shema facing her, which Agois Maimonides says that's specifically regarding his wife. But other women, even less than the tafach, would be an erva, and one would be forbidden to say the Shema facing her. Halach Yud Zayin. Now, Kashem Shu Asa Connected Erva Zachem, just like it's forbidden to say the Shema facing other people's erva, other people's covered areas, which is generally the general area, or by a woman, any of the covered areas. So he's forbidden to say the Shema facing his own erva. And the Leika Kshu Arm, he's not to say the Shema when he's undressed, until he at least covers his genital area. Now, if let's say he had a belt of cloth, or leather, or sock, or sack, al musnav, on his loins, which is the lower region which would cover by his waist and beneath. So even though the rest of his body is uncovered, again, he's allowed to say the Shema as long as the erva is covered. As long as his heel or really any other part of his body doesn't touch the erva. If someone was sleeping in his blanket and he was undressed, so even though his whole body is covered, but he has to separate with his blanket beneath his heart, separating between his heart and his erva, his genital area, and he could say the Shema. But he can't separate by his neck, put his blanket against his neck and say the Shema, because although it's going to stop his eyes, but his heart is going to see the erva. And it's like he's saying the Shema without a belt, which is forbidden because even the heart is not supposed to see his erva. If you have two people sleeping under the same blanket and they're undressed, either one of them is now to say the Shema. Although even though he's going to pull the blanket beneath his heart by his waist to separate, because it's achate talis mafsekes beinehem. He has to also have the blanket separating between him and the other person sleeping underneath the blanket. Until neither one of their skins is touching the other one's skins. From the waist down, because if not, by just the fact of their skin touching will bring to thoughts of sin, which is problematic during the time of the Shema. Now, if he was sleeping with his wife, or with his sons, or the young members of the household, which he's accustomed to, and it doesn't bring him to these types of thoughts, their bodies like his body, it doesn't sense any sensory experience to be problematic in the middle when he's saying the Shema. Even if his skin is touching them, all he has to do is turn his face around because he shouldn't see their erva, because that's even for a cotton. And again, he separates, he puts his, let's say, blanket beneath his heart. Currently, he can say the Shema like that, even though he's touching their body from the waist down. Now, regarding this halacha, until what age do we say they consider as minors that he could be sleeping with them in the bed and say the Shema? So Achi HaZachar ben Shtei Meser Shana B'Mechad, it's a boy up until the age of 12 and 1 day. V'anakeva bas Achas Eser Shana B'Mechad, and a girl up until the age of 11 and 1 day. And that is Shtei Tavnisim Ketavnis Gedam, that their body structure is like the structure of adults, meaning, paraphrasing a pasuk, Shadayim Nechainu, their breasts are developed, Usorech Tzimech, and their hair is sprouting. And then after that age, Leikro, he's not they say the Shema, Achatavsik talis by name, until you have a talis separating between the two of them. Now, but if you don't have this Shadayim Nechainu Usorech Tzimech, they haven't really reached the age of puberty, they haven't really developed. Then actually, then even after that age, he could say the Shema with their skin touching. You don't have to have a separation. 1 year later, until a boy, until the age of 13. When the cave and the girl, which is the age of 12 and 1 day, which then they're already adults, then even if they're not fully developed, would be problematic to say the Shema with their skin touching until he has a separation between him and their skin.